All right, today we are diving into one of the most vivid and honestly intense chapters in the Gospels, Luke 21. Our goal here is simple. We're going to walk through it verse by verse and build a story so clear in your mind that you just can't forget it. Let's get started. You might think a chapter like this starts with a bang, some huge prophecy right out of the gate. But it doesn't. It starts with a really quiet, powerful moment in the temple. And it all kicks off with this one question that'll make you rethink everything you thought you knew about value.
So we find ourselves right in the heart of the temple. It's bustling. You can imagine the noise, the grand gestures, people showing off their devotion. But Jesus? He's about to zoom in on the one person that absolutely nobody else is paying attention to.
Okay, verse 1. Jesus looks up and what does he see? He sees the rich, right? They're walking up and putting their gifts into the treasury. I want you to picture this. Imagine these wealthy, well-dressed people making a show of it, dropping these heavy bags of coins into a big, ornate box. You could just hear it, right? The clank of gold and silver echoing through the temple. This isn't a quiet donation. Oh no, this is a performance.
But then, in verse 2, the camera lens racks focus. The whole scene just gets quiet. Jesus also sees a certain poor widow putting in 2 mites. Now these are the smallest, least valuable coins you could possibly have. Let's just zoom in on her hand. See those 2 tiny, worn-out copper coins? They're worth almost nothing to anybody else.
And this is where Jesus just flips everything on its head. In verses 3 and 4, he explains what he really sees. He says, "Truly I say to you that this poor widow has put in more than all." And then he explains why. And this is so crucial. The rich folks, they gave out of their abundance, their extra cash. It didn't really cost them anything. But her, she gave out of her poverty. She put in everything she had to live on. It's like in your mind, you can see her 2 little coins start to glow with this brilliant light, totally outshining that big pile of gold. It wasn't about the amount. It was about the sacrifice.
So just as the disciples are trying to wrap their heads around this radical idea of value, Jesus makes a hard pivot. He goes from talking about the gifts inside the temple to the temple itself, and he drops a prediction that must have sounded completely insane.
So verse 5, some of the disciples are marveling at the temple. And why wouldn't they? It was adored with these beautiful stones, incredible donations. I mean, this place was a wonder of the ancient world. It was a symbol of permanence, of God's presence. But then, in verse 6, Jesus looks right at it and says, "As for these things which you see, the days will come in which not one stone shall be left upon another that shall not be thrown down." Just imagine that, the glorious building literally dissolving before your eyes into a pile of smoking rubble.
Naturally, verse 7 is the disciples just reeling from this. They are stunned. They immediately press him for details. So they asked him, saying, "Teacher, but when will these things be, and what sign will there be when these things are about to take place?" You can just see the anxiety and confusion on their faces.
Now, Jesus doesn't give them a calendar date, no. Instead, he lays out a sequence of events. It's a period of global chaos that he compares to childbirth. A painful, difficult process that signals something totally new is about to be born.
Verse 8 is his very first warning, and it's all about deception. He says, "Take heed that you not be deceived. For many will come in my name, saying, 'I am he,' and the time has drawn near. Therefore, do not go after them." Then in verse 9, he tackles fear. "But when you hear of wars and commotions, do not be terrified, for these things must come to pass first, but the end will not come immediately." In other words, don't panic. This is just the start.
And then, the scope gets way bigger. In verse 10, he tells them, "Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom." And verse 11 just piles on the natural and cosmic chaos. And there will be great earthquakes in various places, and famines and pestilences, and there will be fearful sights and great signs from heaven. It's like a rapid-fire list of global upheaval.
Then, in verse 12, he yanks it from the world stage and makes it deeply, deeply personal. He says, "But before all these things, they will lay their hands on you and persecute you. You will be brought before kings and rulers for my name's sake." Wow. But what's the point of all this suffering? Verse 13 gives this incredible answer. "But it will turn out for you as an occasion for testimony." It's not pointless. It's a platform.
So, what are they supposed to say when they're on trial for their lives? Well, verse 14 gives a command that makes no logical sense. Therefore, settle it in your hearts not to meditate beforehand on what you will answer. Don't prep your speech. Why? Verse 15 gives the promise, "For I will give you a mouth and wisdom, which all your adversaries will not be able to contradict or resist."
Imagine standing before these powerful rulers, and when you open your mouth, this divine wisdom just flows out, leaving them speechless.
The warnings just keep getting more intense. Verse 16 says, "You will be betrayed, even by parents and brothers, relatives and friends, and they will put some of you to death." Verse 17 adds, "And you will be hated by all for my name's sake." But right after that, in verse 18, comes this unbelievable promise, "But not a hair of your head shall be lost." And then verse 19 gives the key to survival. "By your patience possess your souls." It's about endurance.
So after all these general signs, Jesus now gives one super specific, unmissable signal. This is it. This is the final alarm bell, the sign that the city's destruction is right at the door.
Verse 20 lays out the signal loud and clear, "But when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know that its desolation is near." And verse 21 is the emergency escape plan. There's no negotiation here. "Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let those who are in the midst of her depart." Basically, get out, now. And verse 22 explains why. "For these are the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled."
Verses 23 and 24 paint a heartbreaking picture of what happens to those who don't or can't leave. Verse 23 says there will be great distress in the land and wrath upon this people. And verse 24 gives the grim details. "And they will fall by the edge of the sword and be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem will be trampled by Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled." The image here is just devastating.
Okay, now the whole tone of the prophecy makes a massive shift. After all this destruction on earth, our focus gets lifted up to the heavens. The mood turns from terror and despair to cosmic signs and, finally, to ultimate hope.
Verse 25 takes us into outer space. "And there will be signs in the sun, in the moon, and in the stars. And on the earth distress of nations, with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring." Then verse 26 shows the effect this has on everyone. Men's hearts failing them from fear and the expectation of those things which are coming on the earth. For the powers of the heavens will be shaken. This is universal, paralyzing fear.
But then, at the absolute peak of this worldwide panic, verse 27 reveals the main event. "Then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory." And for those who are waiting for him, verse 28 gives a completely different command. "Now when these things begin to happen, look up and lift up your heads, because your redemption draws near." The very thing that terrifies the world is the sign of your rescue.
To show just how certain all of this is, Jesus uses a simple parable. Verse 29, "Look at the fig tree." Verse 30, "When they start to bud, you know summer is near." It's obvious, right? Verse 31 connects it all. "So you also, when you see these things happening, know that the kingdom of God is near." Verse 32 even gives a sense of the timing, but he lands it all with this ultimate, rock-solid guarantee in verse 33. "Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away."
The prophecies have been laid out with stunning, terrifying clarity. So the final question is the most important one, because it's for us. In light of all this, how are you supposed to live right here, right now?
Verse 34 is a direct warning about getting distracted. He says, "Take heed to yourselves, lest your hearts be weighed down with carousing, drunkenness, and cares of this life, and that day come on you unexpectedly." And verse 35 explains why. "For it will come as a snare on all those who dwell on the face of the whole earth." It's a trap. So what's the escape plan? Verse 36 gives the clear command, "Watch therefore and pray always that you may be counted worthy to escape all these things and to stand before the Son of Man."
After this mind-bending vision of the future, the chapter doesn't end on a note of fear. It ends with a simple, steady rhythm. Verse 37 tells us Jesus' daily routine. "And in the daytime he was teaching in the temple, but at night he went out and stayed on the mountain called Olivet." And verse 38 shows us how the people responded. "Then early in the morning all the people came to him in the temple to hear him." At the end of the day, the response to cosmic prophecy is simple. Just show up every day and listen.